Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is Take 5 with Steven Travers. Our producer, our engineer is Logan Landers. We're going to ask him to do something a little unique today. Steven, we've got a special guest, if you will, that's lined up through the video that you took years ago. First, welcome to the show, and then tell our audience how we're going to begin today's show, which is uniquely different from what we've done in the past. And we're going to have an interview. Today, we're going to talk about the College World Series. You've been and you have firsthand experience. You're going to get to share that with our viewers and our listeners today.
Yes, we're going to be looking at an interview that I conducted with two people, Dave Weatherman and Frank Peron, and they'll be explained in the interview who they are and what their significance is, but they were both members of the 1979 Cal State Fullerton Titans National Championship baseball team. It's an interview I conducted with them at the College World Series at Charles Schwab Field in Omaha, Nebraska, 2 years ago in 2023. The college baseball playoffs are about to start. USC is going to be playing Penn State in about 2 hours in the Big Ten tournament. So I think this was a good time to show this interview, which is a really good interview, and then talk about college baseball. So I think we can get into this interview, and then we'll move on with our discussion after that.
There we go. All right. So Logan Landers is going to take over for us right now, and this is an interview from the College World Series. How long ago was this, Steven?
2 years ago, 2023.
Super. So Logan, whenever you're ready to cue it up, we'll begin.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Steve Travers, host of Go the Distance podcast and YouTube channel. Today is a very, very special day. It is Game 3, the second day of the 2023 College Baseball World Series at the fabulous Charles Schwab Field in the middle of America, Omaha, Nebraska. This is a day in which we will be seeing two teams, the Stanford Cardinals representing the Pac-12 versus the number one team in the nation, the number one seed, winners of the 1955 College World Series, the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest. But before we get to that, we're going to take a ride back in the Wayback Machine, or as my friend Dave Weatherman, to the right, looking at your screen, he would say, a blast from the past. These are two members, Frank Peron on the left, and to his right, or to his left, on the right on the screen, Dave Weatherman, members of the 1979 Cal State Fullerton National Champion baseball team that changed the paradigm of college baseball. Prior to 1979, college baseball essentially was USC and maybe Arizona State and Texas. And there wasn't much else. Over the previous 15 years, USC had won 5 titles in a row. They had won the previous year. In 79, new teams emerged out of California, Cal State Fullerton, and their rival from the Southern California Baseball Association, the Pepperdine Waves. Fullerton won the title, beating Arkansas 2-1 in the title game. Now, we're going to get to the details of that, and it's not going to be me who's going to tell you those details. But let's start with Frank Peron on your left on the screen. Mr. Peron was my teammate at Redwood High School in Marin County in Northern California. And just to give you a little bit of background on that, the team was coached by a legendary coach named Al Endress. And at the end of the 1970s, the Sporting News, the Bible of baseball, named Redwood High the high school program of the decade in the 1970s. This man you're looking at was the greatest high school pitcher these eyes have ever seen. 17-1, 1.90 earned run average, 190 strikeouts in 80 innings. I'm told that was third most strikeouts in a single season by a high school pitcher ever in high school up until that time. Frank, welcome to Go the Distance with Steve Travers. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you, Steve.
Having a good time here in Omaha?
Loving it.
Fabulous. All right. Now, here's what I'm going to get at, Frank. You went to Cal State Fullerton. You were the number one pick in the secondary phase of the 77 draft, and you end up at Cal State Fullerton. There were a lot of schools you could have gone to. Tell me the process. You were drafted first by the Giants. Tell me about coming out of Redwood High and how you ended up at Cal State Fullerton.
I went to junior college out of Redwood, Central Arizona. Followed Coach Anderson's son. He was my teammate. They had won the 1976 National Junior College Championship. I went there because I wanted to get back in the draft without going to a university at first. Played there, 77 season, had a pretty good year. Drafted in January by Cleveland in the first round. Forego that draft. Then I was drafted number 1 by Minnesota. Offer was so-so. My high school coach, Coach Enders, was friends with Augie, Garrido, the Cal State Fullerton head coach. He asked me if I'd be interested. I took a recruiting trip. Loved Augie from day one and decided to go to school there.
Now, at that time, Fullerton recruited almost entirely in Southern California, and in fact, mostly from Orange County and maybe Long Beach and Torrance. And they really didn't recruit nationally. You were one of the first players to come to the Titans from Northern California. Talk a little bit about what Augie Garrido said to you, and perhaps the influence of Al Endress, who had coached in Vallejo, California, where Augie grew up. How that influenced your decision, or perhaps Augie Garrido's decision to dip into the Bay Area to get some talent?
Well, like I said, it stemmed from Al Enders' relationship with Augie. He had told him about me. Augie was interested. And as soon as I met Augie and I talked to him, had a good feel about it. You know, everybody talked about beating everybody else. Augie knew we were right there. We were ready. We programmed, ready to bust the whole scene open, and that's exactly what we did.
All right. Well, Frank Peron, thank you very much for being a guest, actually our first guest for an upcoming podcast called Go the Distance, which gets its name from another Cal State Fullerton Titan, Kevin Costner, who went to Cal State Fullerton and is a good friend of Augie Garrido's. So now we're going to switch focus. This is Dave Weatherman. He's on the right on your screen. Dave Weatherman, who is Frank Peron's lifelong friend. All right. We're back in business with Blue Star with Dave Weatherman, star of the Cal State Fullerton Titans. Welcome, Dave, to Go the Distance for host Steve Travers. How are you doing today in Omaha?
Doing wonderful, Steve. Beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day, and it's great to have you here. Okay, now I'm not going to describe what you did at Fullerton, but it was epic and it was great. I'm going to let you talk about it, but I'm just going to say before we get started, we have Frank Peron here. Frank, Dave, and I are lifelong friends. I've known Frank since 1975, Dave since 1978. Dave and I were in the A's organization together in 1982. Both played at Idaho Falls of the Pioneer League, where Jose Canseco was in his first year in baseball. But we're not going to get into that right now. Today is the day about college baseball. Now, okay, Dave, you come out of West High School in Torrance, California. I've seen your high school statistics. You are an outstanding high school pitcher. Most kids in those days, they wanted to play for the Trojans or maybe Arizona State. Tell us how you end up as a freshman at Cal State Fullerton with Augie Garrido.
Well, you're right. I did want to go to USC. I got offered partial scholarship there. It wasn't good enough for me. I didn't want to go in where I didn't feel I was wanted without a full ride. I felt that's what I deserved. So I didn't get that full ride to SC, so I decided not to go there. It was between Fullerton and Pepperdine. That pretty much all changed once I met Augie Garrido and I listened to Augie and what he was selling in terms of the program and what we could accomplish, etc. I thought he was a guy that could make it happen for me, and as it turns out, it was.
Well, he certainly was. Now, in the fall of 1978, I was a junior college pitcher at Santa Monica College. I pitched against that Fullerton team in a fall ball game, And I don't think I have ever seen guys swing the bat like that in my life. There were a lot of good hitters. They had a player named Tim Wallach who hit one off me, hit it off the side of Saddleback Mountain. Tell me what kind of a ball player Tim Wallach was, later a major leaguer with Expos and the Dodgers.
Tim is just, and he still is, very unassuming, very humble guy, just very talented. And he came to us out of Saddleback and was really not a home run hitter. He got in with Augie and Jody Robinson, and they started working on different aspects of hitting. And next thing you know, he's drafted by the Angels after a junior season, came back senior season, won the national championship, hit 18 homers in junior year, 20-some homers in senior year. Next thing you know, he's number one pick with Montreal and has an epic career, played 18 years in the major leagues. So, and still the same humble guy.
So, in 1978, as I mentioned, I'm at Santa Monica College. The two best known pitchers in college baseball at that time are Tim Leary of UCLA, Bill Bordley of the University of Southern California. I decide I want to go see Tim Leary pitch for UCLA. So I get a ticket and I go to the game, and somehow I made a mistake. It wasn't Tim Leary, it was Dave Schmidt, who later pitched in the major leagues for the Texas Rangers. I'm watching the game. Schmidt's throwing BBs, knocking down his opponents, who were Cal State Fullerton Titans. And there's this guy pitching for Fullerton. He's not very tall. He doesn't throw all that hard, but he's got good control. He's got a slider. He's hitting the corners. Fullerton manages to tag a run on Schmidt, takes a 1-0 lead, and this guy keeps throwing shutout inning after shutout inning. And next thing you know, Fullerton has won the game 1-0. That pitcher was you, Dave Weatherman. Tell me a little bit about that game against Dave Schmidt and the Bruins.
I wasn't even supposed to pitch. It was the second game of a doubleheader. The gentleman at the first game, if you were there for both, went extras, and the guy who was going to start the second game came in relief in the first game, and we ended up losing on a home run in the 11th or 12th, I don't recall. And so I was Weatherman, your starter. So I didn't really have any time to rethink it, get in my own head, if you will, and went down, started to warm up, and 7 innings later, I got the win. Pretty much what you said, yeah.
All right, now let's fast forward. It's 1979. You're a sophomore. I'll give you the essentials. Dave Weatherman, 15-1, All-American, one of the best pitchers in collegiate baseball. Cal State at some point in that season, Dave, were you guys ranked number 1 or close to it?
Yes, we were ranked. At one point, we climbed up to 2, and back then you didn't play on Sundays. And University of Hawaii with Derek Tatsuna was number 1, ranked number 1, and they came to the mainland. We played them on a Sunday at Fullerton, and we ended up beating Tatsuna. It was the only loss he had all year. He was 20-1, and we beat him, and that thrust us into the number 1 spot, which I think we held pretty much. We were off and on the rest of that season.
Okay, so let's get one thing perfectly clear. The Titans, even though a lot of people didn't know who you were before that season, it was not a surprise that you were a team that looked, if not favored to win in 79, certainly was an absolute contender. They had gone there in 75, and they made it again with you in 79. All right, now you take it from here. Tell us about your first start. Well, first of all, okay, you guys lose the opener. And this is very difficult in those days. If you lose the opener, it puts you into the loser's bracket. It's not like it is today. You really got to fight your way back. You then get your first start in the series. Tell me about that.
Well, to your point, it's back then we played 6 straight consecutive days. So we lost the first game to Mississippi State. We came back the next morning. That was an evening game. We came back the next morning to play Connecticut, which was my start. And we ended up getting them by 8-3. And then we were in the losers back the rest of the way, as you stated. Until we just worked our way up, and we played every single day to get to that championship game, which they don't do today. Today they have built-in days off. Much easier on staffs than today.
All right. Tell me about your second start in the College World Series.
Second start wasn't too good. I had the semifinal game. I pitched against Peron, and it's the end of the year. You're not feeling good. Nobody's feeling good. You're all banged up for the year. Anyhow, I didn't get out of the first inning. I think I gave up 3 runs in a third of an inning or 2/3 of an inning, and got hooked. And I wasn't real happy. Obviously, I thought I cost Cal State the national championship, or at least a chance at it. So I was down in the clubhouse, beating things up, trying to tear things off walls, as you can imagine. Yeah, it was not very good. So, anyhow, that was my second start. Yeah. You want me to roll right into the third start?
Well, okay, yeah. Well, let me just preface.
Okay.
You have you think you have blown it for your team, but your team rallies, saves the day for Dave Weatherman, comes back and wins the game. But you don't think you're going to be pitching. You think your season is over. You and our friend Frank Peron, if I heard my facts right, go out and have a few cocktails that night. So you basically figure you're going to be a spectator.
That story has grown over the years, but here's exactly what happened.
Okay. Take it from here.
So I came up in about the 7th inning. I was downstairs in the club until then, and I hear cheers, and we come back, and we end up winning. So I'm up above celebrating with my teammates, thinking, "Hey, we're going to the final game. Fantastic, right? That's what we were here for." So I think my series is over because I just pitched. And Augie walks down. I'll never forget it. It's like, "Hey, you need to get some rest." Why? You're throwing. I'm kind of shocked, actually. So you just get knocked out of the first inning. You have all night to think about it, and all day because it's an evening game. So you know how that goes as a pitcher, Steve. It gets in your head. So obviously I didn't sleep real well, so as we were going back, Frank was my roommate. As we were going back, he said, "Hey, you always pitch better with a hanger." I can't argue that. So he goes, "My recommendation is we go have a couple of beers." I said, "Okay." Now, we didn't stay out long. We had a couple of pitches with our hamburgers across the street, and that was it. It's got blown out.
It's not out of control.
It was not by any means. We were just having
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, I needed to because
Of course you did.
It's grown out of proportion throughout the years. So anyhow, I still didn't sleep worth a damn, and so the next day, obviously, we had a championship game. So so that was the night before. That's how we found out about it. Next day, actually, it was a cold day. The wind was blowing in, and it's overcast and cold. Great pitcher's day. It was so cold, in fact, I'm wearing woolies. I had long sleeves on.
Wow. Considering how hot it is right now, it's the same time of year. It's hard to believe.
It's unheard of, absolutely. And in fact, we didn't even fill the stadium because of the bad weather. And so anyhow, I still wasn't feeling well from the day before. In fact, the first 4 innings, I would go down in between innings, and I would go down into the clubhouse, and I would have my hand on the shower head, and the trainer would milk my arm and try and just get the bad blood out of it. So for the first 4 innings, I did that. And then I gave up a run in the 5th. And for some reason, at that point in time, I don't know why. You know how they talk about being in the zone, but I was so ticked off that I gave up a run that I came in and
all right, fans, welcome our ministers.
Anyway, I wasn't focused on it. I was more focused on what was going on in the field. Arm didn't bother me anymore. I never went downstairs again. We came back and got a run in the bottom of the 5th to tie it up. I shut them down in the 6th. We scored in the bottom of the 6th. That was 2-1, and that basically shut them out from there. So it was
ready to go. And how
it was
real.
real.
I mean, what a first day we had.
Biggest night of my life.
A complete game, 2-1 victory over the Arkansas Razorbacks, a team that had 2 future big leaguers, Johnny Ray and Kevin McReynolds. A national championship for Augie, Garrido, and Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton, since then, has won 3 more. They have 4 national titles, 1984, 1995, 2004. They've written themselves into the glory annals of college baseball history. The man you're looking at, Dave Weatherman, is one of the early bellwethers of Titan baseball, who
Are you kidding me?
led this program really from nowhere to greatness. Dave Weatherman and Frank Ferroni, I want to thank you very much for being guests on Go the Distance with Steve Travers, our podcast. Can't wait to get this edited and up and running. Thank you, and God bless you for being a part of this and for being a part of my weekend.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Dave.
Great interview, Steve. I know that the atmosphere a little with the organ playing and all that going on, but these guys were a part of baseball history. You had mentioned before we went to the interview what a difference that Cal State Fullerton was able to make. 5 appearances in the College World Series. They win 4 of them, and you got to be a part of the guys that were there. Not only just with the interview, but with the history that was behind that. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of college baseball, the World Series, a little bit of Omaha, and even pre-Omaha, how it got its beginnings. But thank you for the interview. What was that like for you? I mean, you mentioned how hot it was, but you're in the shrine here for college baseball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very special day and a special trip. You heard me mention that it was for Go the Distance with Steven Travers. That was a podcast that I tried and only did a few episodes, but that was a really good episode that I decided to incorporate that into Take 5 with Steven Travers. I had been to the old stadium, Rosenblatt, and then at some point about 12, 13 years ago, they replaced it with Charles Schwab Field, and I had never been there. This was really a bucket list day for me to go with 2 of my best friends, Frank Ferroni and Dave Weatherman, and another friend, Brad Beadle. And, you know, you're with 2 guys, and I'm a college baseball player, but these 2 guys had been on a College World Series championship team, and Dave was the star of the College World Series, as we heard. So it was very special. It was a trip down memory lane, and a wonderful, wonderful event that particular weekend for us.
Is it a little bit like the Field of Dreams, where you're driving from wherever and you've got to get to Omaha, and wherever you've come from, there's a time in that drive where there's nothing but fields, whether it be wheat or corn or rye, whatever. And then you start getting the sense it's coming closer. It's 10 miles away. It's 5 miles away. What's the experience like for someone who's never been, in terms of just understanding where this is, the heartland of America, and the size and scope of what you mentioned with Charles Schwab Field there in Omaha?
Yeah, well, I can understand what you're saying perfectly, because I have been there on several occasions. I first played in the Jayhawk League and drove, I think it's Highway 50 or Interstate 50. I'm not absolutely sure, but it's the road between Omaha and Lincoln. And I was on that road, and it's like exactly like you say, there's nothing but farmland, although there is the Strategic Air Command Museum, which is out there. And then I was on it again with my daughter, and I was looking, and I hadn't realized that I had been on that particular highway until I saw some signs for Wahoo, which was a little town that I remember was notable because it was the home of Wahoo Sam Crawford, who was a Hall of Fame player for Detroit Tigers, teammate of Ty Cobb. So I've been there a few times, and you're absolutely right. And it's like I mentioned to Dave, we were sitting in the stands, and I said, you know, it doesn't get any better than this. It's the Midwest, and it's the middle of the summer, and it's baseball. And there is a sense of, exactly like you say, Field of Dreams. There is a sense that you are going back in time. And I can honestly say this, and I've been to everything. I've been to many World Series games. I have been to NBA playoffs, all-star games in every sport, Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl, college, many Rose Bowls, and college football national title games. I honestly can say that this experience in 2023 that you witnessed was, for me, the best experience I've ever had as a fan at a sporting event. It was magnificent. It was absolutely excitement, and the size of the crowd is like a major league game, only with it's really like combining the World Series, the baseball World Series with the college football national championship. That's what it's like.
Help clarify that just a little bit. Most people up until now don't pay a whole lot of attention to who's winning and losing in the tournament play, the conference play, the divisions within conference. And they just, oh, well, who's in and who am I going to root for? They root for a school. They don't really have a particular group of players. What was it about that event that helped you to just love the game even more? Was it the historical aspect, just the grassroots of it? Was it the importance of having big school teams that are coming from all across the country that are gathered for this one tournament to bring out their best at the time when it's needed most?
Yeah, well, first of all, we saw Dave Weatherman, and literally walking around Charles Schwab Field, he gets recognized because there was a very well-known documentary called Inning by Inning, the Augie Garrido story, and Dave was interviewed in that. And true college baseball fans have all seen that that documentary. Augie was a famous coach at Cal State Fullerton, then later won a couple national titles at Texas, which is really a huge college baseball power. And so a lot of people recognized Dave and were coming up to him and said, "Hey, weren't you in the Cal State or in the Texas documentary or the Augie Garrido documentary, or aren't you Dave Weatherman?" So that alone was fun. And then the other thing that you get is kind of a regional thing where we're sort of representing California, my friends and I, and we're hanging out with people from Wake Forest and Louisiana State and Florida and a lot of Southeastern Conference schools. And so you get in a lot of conversations with people, and they're all friendly conversations. There isn't any. It isn't like, USC and UCLA hating on each other or anything.
Our guys and your guys pointing at each other, trash talking. I would think that there's less of that at this point. It's respect for the game and the appreciation of how hard it is to get there. And once you do, it's half of it is just the reward of being there. The other half, obviously, is getting to stay.
Yeah, and people appreciate when you have knowledge. So if I'm talking to some LSU fans and I know a lot about LSU baseball history, they appreciate that, or Florida history or what have you. And I do. So it was just so much fun. I mean, the whole town it just turns out it's a Mardi Gras. It really is an amazing, it's really a 10-day event. We were there for about 3 or 4 days. Mentioned the coming in, you fly in, and the first thing you see at the airport is across the way, Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is a very historic place where the pioneers who were coming out west on covered wagons, they would have council on Council Bluffs. It was their last chance to really talk over the strategy of how they were going to cross the Rockies and the Sierra Mountains on their way out to California and the West. So that's Omaha, Nebraska. It's in the middle of the country, and it's I've been there for a University of Nebraska USC football game, and people there just love their sports, and they love the Cornhuskers, and they really the people of Nebraska really come out for the fans who show up, the Uber drivers, the bartenders, the waiters, everybody you meet. It's a friendly place.
Yeah, it's big business as well. Hey, let's talk real quick. You mentioned him a little while ago. I want to give a little respect out to Augie Garrido. What a amazing career. Now, I know that there were some things that happened in his life, like he probably couldn't get through a sentence, at least while he was on the baseball field, without using some words that needed to be bleeped out during a portion of the conversation with anybody, an umpire, another manager, or even a player. But my goodness, you talk about a resume, 5 College World Series championships. He won 20 different conference titles between Fullerton and Texas and the other places where he's been. He was the Sporting News Coach of the Year twice. He was Baseball America College Coach of the Year a couple of times as well. 4 times he was the Coach of the Year for collegiate baseball, Big West Coach of the Year, and 6 times Big 12 Coach of the Year between 2002 and 2011. He's in the College Baseball Hall of Fame and duly earned. Talk a little bit about him and the significance that he had just before he gets to Fullerton. What was the program like? And then how did he kind of instantaneously change it?
There was no program. I think it was a club sport. I think when Kevin Costner was there, it was like a softball team or a club sport. I don't even think it was an NCAA. I don't think they were Division I, if they were anything. Augie grew up in Vallejo, and as Frank Ferroni had mentioned, he knew my high school coach, Al Endress, who was a coach in Vallejo for several years before he came to Marin County. So Al knew Augie, and Augie had actually learned a lot from Al Endress and the way Endress conducted practices. And Endress was a former football player, and Augie picked up on a lot of that and conducted baseball practices like a football practice. There were a lot of drills, and there wasn't anybody standing around with their hands in their pockets. There was constant movement. So that was the first thing. And Augie had been a professional ball player, the Indians, and he coached the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And he came to Fullerton because he literally said, this is where the baseball players are. He looked at Fullerton and Orange County, which is obviously a large population, close to Los Angeles, great weather, and just nothing but high schools all over the place that produced great athletes. I mean, it was already a place that had produced Heisman Trophy winners, and many major league stars had come out of these towns like Newport, Tustin, Fullerton, Yorba Linda, Anaheim, Garden Grove. These were places that had terrific high school teams, and he just realized this is a goldmine of talent. And he realized he could build that program without even necessarily getting the blue chippers. He understood, okay, SC and UCLA, they're going to get these Hollywood types, who are the superstars out of high school. But he was going to get the guys who had a chip on their shoulder, who might not have gotten the ride, or maybe they were coming out of a junior college. And those were exactly Dave Weatherman, who described how USC had not given him a full ride. He had a chip on his shoulder, and his teammates did. And that was how he built that program. And Augie built the second half of the 20th century in college baseball. There's Rod Dado, and then there's Augie Garrido. Now, I would also add Skip Bertman of LSU, and I believe it's Damie Maneri of the University of Miami. And now there's some other really good coaches, Corbin over at Vanderbilt. Those are your Mount Rushmore coaches of college baseball, but Augie built it from scratch. A lot of these other coaches have taken over at a time which college baseball is really a big business and a big thing. It wasn't a big business, and he had a high school field at best at Fullerton. That's what he had for many, many years until they finally built a new stadium.
They've obviously grown from Cal State Who. His first year there, 73, they're 19-33. They go 37-17 his second year. They win the California Collegiate Athletic Association Conference. Then they move to the Pacific Coast Athletic Association. They win 2 years there. Then they go to the Southern California Baseball Association, and that's when what a domination. Just absolutely amazing how well they played there. 2 national championships in that stint. They win another one in 87. He goes to Illinois. Then he comes back to Fullerton. He wins another one there at Fullerton in 95. Then he goes to Texas. And it wasn't all roses and wonderful days. 1, 2, 3, I'm counting 6 years before they finally won their first national championship. That's a long time. Texas was very patient with him. And I guess he was able to turn the tide, so to speak, and get some wins. But he wins 2 national championships, one in 2002 and 2005 there. And in 09, they were the conference and tournament champions, but they didn't win the national championship. Great success wherever he went.
Yes, and the documentary, which I highly recommend, is called Inning by Inning, and it was based on a book that Augie wrote. And then there was documentary. It was actually made by the same guy, Linklater, who did the movie Dazed and Confused, and a number of very successful movies. He also did Everybody Wants Some, which is a comedic story about a fictional college baseball team. And as you mentioned, yeah, Augie's language in that documentary gets pretty blue. I interviewed Augie in 2000 when I was at Street Zebra. Actually, this is kind of how I reacquainted myself with Dave Weatherman after I hadn't seen him in a number of years. When I interviewed him for that article, which was about this 1979 season. And I interviewed Augie and the Pepperdine coach because Pepperdine played a big role too. This Pepperdine and Fullerton just replaced USC and UCLA as the powerhouse programs on the Pacific Coast at that particular time. They both went to the College World Series. Pepperdine came this close to winning that College World Series. They actually knocked Dave Weatherman out of the game in the first inning. But Fullerton rallied to win, and then it was Fullerton to beat Arkansas. Yeah, that was a great interview with Augie, and he gave me a lot of insight into the program and how he built that program at that time.
Well, there are some guys that, from a historical standpoint, Steven, Augie being one of them. You've mentioned Dado on numerous occasions. I would add, especially in the early days, or Dick Siebert from Minnesota having a couple of championships that he was a part of. Miami has won a couple. Oregon State has won a couple of times. Go back to, well, I guess we can go to the beginning. If you don't mind, real quick, let me just go with the history. I had to look this up. So the first two College World Series were in Hames Field in Kalamazoo, Michigan, back in 1947 and 48. Then it was moved to Wichita, and from 49 and 50, I'm sorry, in 1949 was in Wichita, and then the College World Series was moved to Omaha in 1950, and now it's switched stadiums, and there's been some stadium names, but Omaha really was the home from 1950 on. I had to be honest to myself. I thought that they had college championships well beyond, like they had, football championships, but not so. Even though it was America's game, it wasn't until 1950 that Omaha really housed it and turned it into the tradition that it was. Was there any sense of that 1950, 55, early 60 that you could sense? Were there banners or photographs, or were there any, recollection that you could bring up that talked about, the early history of Omaha and its significance with the college football world or college baseball World Series?
Well, there's literally a bar restaurant, which is across the street from Charles Schwab Field, that has some of the greatest photographs of the early days of Omaha baseball, and shows some of the construction of Rosenblatt Stadium, and mentions, I think Rosenblatt was the mayor of Omaha, and he played a big role in bringing and keeping the College World Series in Omaha. But you mentioned 1947 and 1948. This is very interesting. When it was in Kalamazoo, the very first College World Series featured the University of California versus Yale. The first baseman for Yale was a guy by the name of George H.W. Bush, who later became president of the United States, not to mention the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. He was a pretty good defensive first baseman, but he wasn't good enough to lead Yale to the win. Cal won that day under a coach named George Wolfman, who was a legend. The next year, 1948, again, it's Yale and George Bush. And again, they lose to the West Coast, this time to Rod Dado and the University of Southern California. Dado had been a baseball player at USC. He had played for Casey Stengel and the Brooklyn Dodgers. He had become the baseball coach at SC, I believe, in 1941. In the beginning, there were two coaches. They were co-head coaches. The other coach joined the Navy when World War II started, and Dado became the head coach. When the other guy returned, he just simply became the basketball coach at USC, and Dado took over the baseball program. And he was a great coach. As Bill Lee mentioned last week, he really knew baseball and he understood the game, and he'd been schooled by Casey Stengel. And some of the things that he did is, for instance, he was the first guy who really sent his players to play in the summer. And at the beginning, he would send them to Canada, and that's where baseball players went. Western Canada was where all the really good college ball players played in summer ball. He also was perhaps the first, I don't know if he was the first, but might have been, to really develop fall ball, because he had the great weather in Southern California. You could play year round. And these teams played all year round. And he developed SC into a power in the 50s. The other teams during that time that were really good. Texas was good. Wake Forest was good. You mentioned the University of Minnesota under Dick Siebert. Siebert was a famed tactician and a coach who developed practices and strategies for having practice. And that my dad studied a book that Coach Siebert had written, in which it indicated on every single play, even a pass ball, every player on the field has a place to go. There's a backup place. And so these were some of the best coaches, some of the best coaching in all of baseball is done at the collegiate level, high school and collegiate level. As Greg Zunino had talked about some weeks back when he was playing in the Yankee organization, he said the Yankees felt there was this feeling that by the time you got there, you knew the game and you didn't necessarily need to be schooled in the fundamentals, because the thinking was you were a professional and you'd already learned that. Well, these college coaches were teaching that, but slowly but surely, and it was Cal and USC were the two best programs through the 50s. And then slowly but surely, Dado built SC into the school, as they were called, the New York Yankees of collegiate baseball. And they won the national title in 61. They won it again in 63. And by this time, he had done two other things. He had developed, played a huge role in developing the Alaska Summer League, which kind of supplemented Canada. Canada continued to have good summer league baseball, but the Alaska League became a place where Tom Seaver and Rick Monday and Greg Nettles and many, many great stars played collegiate ball in the summers. And out of this grew the Cape Cod League and the California Collegiate League and the Jayhawk League, and really something that is now big business. The Cape Cod League is big business, and a lot of these other leagues are. And Dado, they just won and won and won. And they won 5 consecutive national titles between 1970 and 1974. Bobby Winkles and Jim Brock won some championships at Arizona State. Jerry Kindle, who was a great coach, won a title at Arizona. And Cliff Gustafson came over to Texas and won a title in 75. And so as you can gather from that, the champions were about 3 or 4 teams, USC, Texas, Arizona, Arizona State. And that was it between 1967 and 1978. And then along comes 1979. And this is when I interviewed Dave Weatherman. And this coincides with ESPN coming into collegiate baseball. And this changes everything. College baseball becomes big business. They start building new, beautiful stadiums. They start drawing big crowds. They start to be on television and developing ratings. And today, I could honestly say, I think the college baseball in the Southeastern Conference is probably more popular than, say, the USC basketball program. I really think it probably is. LSU, Florida, Vanderbilt, because the SEC has come to dominate what collegiate baseball is today. USC is making a comeback under Coach Stankiewicz. We're going to see how they do in the Big Ten tournament. They didn't have a stadium the last couple of years. I believe Coach Stankiewicz is the National Coach of the Year for what he's done without a stadium. But there's been huge differences and huge changes. And if you go to Charles Schwab Field, you see it. It's like going to them. It's the major leagues. The crowd, the size of the crowd, the television ratings, the popularity. It's a big deal.
Yeah, the domination of the early, I'm going to call it the first 30 years of the tournament, mostly West Coast teams, although Texas won a few. By 1967, and you had mentioned SC, they had 10 national championships by 74. In 77, Arizona State had 4 by that time. Minnesota had 3. Michigan had 2. Ohio State had 1 or 2. You mentioned Wake Forest and Missouri, Holy Cross, Oklahoma. All were one and done champions, if you will. It was really a struggle for them. Miami started in the mid 80s to win a few, but lately, you're absolutely right. The domination, if you will, by the SEC, where even the early favorites now are Kentucky or Auburn or Vanderbilt again. You got South Carolina; they've won it a few times. Florida, of course. Just a lot of talent. You can play all year long, or at least pretty close to it. You may be shutting down for 2 months a year, December, January, but you're back at work by February 1st, and you're back out on the field. So what are your projections now, at least for this year? You had mentioned already you think SC is going to make a strong show. Without picking a champion, just pick a couple of regions that you might think, these guys have been strong in the past. There's no reason for them to not advance this year.
Well, from what I've seen so far this year, Texas has been ranked number 1 most of the season. I don't know what the rankings are today, but at one point, a couple of weeks ago, something like 9 Southeastern Conference teams were ranked in the top 10 or the top 15.
Yeah.
You also have Texas, as I mentioned. Oregon State has a very strong team. UCLA has been good. UCLA is a school that they were something of an enigma, and they got a new coach named John Savage some years ago. And what I mean by that is that UCLA was a school that you looked at and said, well, how come they're not better in baseball?
Right.
They, in fact, for many years, up until about 2000, I believe, UCLA was second behind USC in producing the most Major League Baseball players of any college. But they hadn't won a College World Series, and they really hadn't even been to the College World Series. And for many, many years, they struggled. It's like, why is UCLA not better? They built a beautiful stadium, Jackie Robinson Stadium, on near campus.
Yeah, it's not on campus. That's one of the things that I would interrupt you and just say they didn't have their own field. That campus, the footprint is so tightly foot by foot, inch by inch. There's very little room for them to expand because they've got a country club to the north, they've got residents to the south, you got residents to the east and west, you've got buildings and a hospital, and the city of Westwood is to your south. There's no place for a campus. They got to go 5-6 miles away just to go practice every day. And sometimes that's not easy to do. But I'm sorry I interrupted you because you're in the middle. What's the issue? Why isn't UCLA always a perennial year after year powerhouse in terms of Pac-10 or Pac-12 baseball?
Well, under Coach Savage, they did develop, come pretty close. I don't know if you call them a perennial, but they won a couple of titles with the likes of Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole. And before that, Brandon Crawford. They recruited a lot in Northern California. They tended to get a lot of really good players that come out of the Pleasanton area, which is a talent-rich baseball area in the Bay Area. And they were getting, the best players in Orange County, Villa Park, Orange Lutheran, Mater Dei High School, Notre Dame, Sherman Oaks, Notre Dame. These kind of programs that have been real high school powerhouses over the last 30 years. But also there's Oregon State. And Oregon State, how they pulled it off, I don't know. I know they have a beautiful stadium, but The weather is not good in the spring. It rains a lot. Oregon is not a huge state, and it's not really a high school sports powerhouse. As far as the University of Oregon football is concerned, they have to recruit in the state of Washington and the state of California to compete. And yet somehow Oregon State built themselves into a power. They won a couple of titles in 2007, 6 and 7, I believe.
6, 7, and 18 are the 3 years that they've actually won it. They've never finished second. They've only won it when they played in the finals.
Right. So, and then the other teams, obviously Texas under Garrido won some championships. They moved over to the Big 12 conference after the Southwestern Conference broke up. They've always been a powerhouse. They're a school that almost is always hosting a regional and have been in the College World Series the most, but they haven't won it. They've been beaten in the College World Series a number of times. Now, there's a real, what you have at this point, if you're going to say, well, who's the greatest program in the history of college baseball? And that always was USC. But at this time, and this is coming from a Trojan graduate who coached in their program, and I hate to say this, but you know, those days are over. You know, that's ancient history. They haven't won. Well, they did win in 1998 under Coach Gillespie, but USC is struggling, and so is most of the West Coast and the Southeastern Conference and the South. To some extent, the Big 12, but even the best teams of the Big 12 are now in the SEC. So the South has just come to completely dominate college sports. And in many ways, they're dominating America. I mean, some of the most successful cities are in the South. Some of the large cities with the lowest crime rate and the best economies are in the South. And they're kind of dominate politically. I don't want to get into that too much, but it's just sort of a reflection on sports. Sports is a reflection of society, and we see it in where you live in Georgia. And year after year, these schools from that area, whether it's Vanderbilt, whether it's South Carolina, whether it's Georgia, lately, we've seen a rebound of LSU. Under Coach Skip Bertman, in the 1990s, they became the dominant team. They won 4 national championships, and they were actually beaten by USC in an upset in the 1998 World Series, so that would have been their 5th. I believe they've won 7 national titles. So at this point, you have to really say they probably have surpassed USC. When you consider what you have to do to win the College World Series these days, you have to go through your season. You've got to go through your conference tournament. Then you have to go through a regional. Then you have to go through a super regional, and then you got to go to the College World Series and win there. And so it's like college football. There's just more games that you have to play and that you have to win. And the LSU Tigers have done that. They have their latest prodigy is Paul Scanes, who I saw pitch 2 years ago when he led LSU to the title. And you took one look at this guy, and he's the greatest college baseball pitcher I've ever seen. You know, back in the day, there was Tim Leary, there was Bill Bordley. There was Mark Pryor, but
you throw Clemens in there with Raj?
I'd throw Roger Clemens in there. Also, it's interesting to note Roger Clemens was a good high school player, but he didn't get a full ride, at least not to the University of Texas. He went to a junior college. I believe he went to San Jacinto Junior College and won a national championship there. And then he won a national title at the University of Texas under not Skip Bertman, under Cliff Gustafson in '83, and then launched himself into the major leagues. He's certainly one of the great ones. I'd throw Bill Spaceman Lee into that mix, guy we talked to last week. He's the winningest pitcher in the history of the Fairbanks Gold Panners, and I think he's second all-time winningest pitcher in USC baseball history. But yeah, we've seen a tremendous rise of college baseball, and it's a big business, and it's going to be on all the networks and on ESPN coming up over the next month, and those ratings are going to be really good. And if you think about it, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, these teams are drawing 14,000 fans, selling out every home game. Yeah. The tailgate experience at Mississippi State is legendary. People put their vans there before the season starts and almost live there the whole season in order to have the best spot for tailgating. And the whole scene outside of Schwab Field in Omaha was just absolutely magnificent. Like I said, I've never had so much fun.
Well, here's a thought for you too. Now, 2 years ago, I got to go to LSU for a Georgia State football game. And in the bus ride onto the campus, we made a couple of turns here. Next thing you know, I'm looking out, and I had seen it on a Google map, but to actually be there, the LSU Tiger Stadium for football, it's iconic, right? For all the right reasons. You got Mike the Tiger's pen, which is just, I think, is north of the end zone there on the other side of a little walking terrace. But on the south side of that is their baseball stadium. And it would rival what Sacramento is doing right now for the A's.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Yeah. I've been to Coastal Carolina a couple of times. Mm-hmm. Their baseball facility is second to none for a small school that didn't. They promoted and said, let's dig in here, and they planted a few dollars. And they built a beautiful. Their colors are like teal and green, black. It's such a beautiful place to watch a baseball game. And guess what? The kids love it. They've got a couple of girls that that want to go to the game. A few of the parents, but there's also a few hundred of the locals there in Conway, South Carolina, that go, I'm going to tailgate and go to the game. I'm going to have a good time tonight. It's going to be a fun game, and we're going to win. And that's part of the experience as well. Troy has a very good program. Louisiana Lafayette, my gosh, they have a great baseball facility, at least in my opinion. There are some great ones out there that I'm not mentioning, but I'm just saying the parity now where college campuses are deciding to spend a couple of dollars has really added, in my opinion, to the level of highly competitive baseball from the Western Michigans or the Washington States of the world all the way up into these Cal State Fullerton programs. And you're seeing it. It's much harder to win the series because a lot of other teams have enough players to be able to get there themselves.
Well, if you're a college baseball player and you can be in California, or you can be in Oregon, or you can be really anywhere, it's pretty tough to turn down an offer to go to a place like Louisiana State or Florida, where you're going to draw 14,000 fans a game. Not only that, your games are on television, and they're on radio, and they're on the internet with a professional announcers and technical crew. Right. You watch a Tennessee Volunteer, just to give one example, and I actually followed a friend of mine whose son played it. First, he played at Wallace State College, which is a junior college. Their facilities, as you mentioned, Harper, were like they were right up there with the Sacramento River Cats, or what the A's are playing in now. Beautiful facilities. This is just a junior college, and I think in Alabama. Then he went to Tennessee, and so I was watching him pitch a lot. So I was listening to their games. The announcers sound like an ESPN crew. They're not a couple of college kids. They're not, some employee of the sports information department and some girl who's a intern. Right. They are there might be a woman, but she's a professional announcer.
And no offense to anybody, they're just saying that these guys they're good at what they do, and they love it, and so do the people that watch and tune in. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and so everything is professional, and the other thing is, and this is plays a big role in schools, whether it's Oklahoma State, Texas, Florida, what have you. You're looking at the Southeastern Conference, and none of those schools are in a major league city, except really only Vanderbilt, which is in Nashville, and they have a pro hockey team, and I think that's all that. Do they have an NBA team? But they don't have Major League Baseball. None of these schools are located where there's a Major League Baseball team. USC has a two Major League Baseball teams as UCLA, but you're talking about relatively small college towns where there isn't all that much else going on. So these are cultural events. Everyone is showing up at these baseball games. The weather is fantastic. It's a party. They're having a blast. Yeah. They're just, the frat boys are out. The sorority girls are there. All their alumni is there. The local people who live in the town. And the whole love of the football team, it plays out with a love for the basketball team and a love for the baseball. Let me tell you something. You go to the University of Nebraska or any of these schools that we're talking about, it's not just baseball. They show up for women's volleyball. They show up for track. These are sports crazy areas. The South has always been like that. It's more so now than ever. And we've talked about, the 1970 USC Alabama game. Obviously, the days of segregation are 50 years old. It's a completely modern world, and it's really the dominant part of America now. And it's a great place to be a coach. Do you want to be a coach at Florida? Do you want to be a coach at Alabama? Or do you want to be in the minor leagues every year, moving your family around to some minor league location? Or you want to be kind of a big deal, because these coaches are big deals. They have coaches shows. They get paid millions of dollars. They're living in a beautiful home that you can probably buy for about $400,000 in Tuscaloosa. That would cost you $2 million in California. What's not to love about it?
Let me, I had to look this up just to confirm. 2 years ago, I did this, and I was fascinated with my findings. Steven, talk about how competitive this is when Texas right now, their overall record for the season, not conference play, their conference are 22-8. They're 42-11. Arkansas, 43-12. LSU, 42-13. Vanderbilt, way behind. They've only won 39 games. They're 39-16. Georgia's won 42 games. Auburn is 38-17. Ole Miss has won 38 games. Tennessee's won 42. Alabama's won 41. Florida is the lowest so far at 38. Mississippi State is 34-21. Oklahoma's won 35 games. Kentucky is 29-24. 29-25 is for Texas A&M. The only two teams in the conference that are under 500 in terms of overall are South Carolina. They're 28-29, and then Missouri has struggled. They're only 3-27 in the conference, and they're 16-39. So let's take Missouri out of the equation. And every team that's in the Southwest Conference for baseball is competitive. They can bring it. And I think from a recruiting perspective, what coach wouldn't say, hey, you come to Ole Miss, you got a chance. We're going to take on LSU, and we're going to beat Alabama, and we're going to fight Florida every step of the way. And Vanderbilt and Texas are right in our sights. You've got just the pull of the conference itself to be able to be a draw for, I want to be a part of that. Texas doesn't want me. I want to go someplace where I can go beat those guys.
Well, and you mentioned these records, let's say 39-11 or 42-8. Almost every one of those losses is to another team in the Southeastern Conference. The only losses they're absorbing are games that they're defeating each other. They're almost undefeated or with really good records in non-conference play, almost all those teams. You mentioned South Carolina with a losing record, so they're a little down. They won a couple national championships just a couple of years ago.
Right.
Missouri is a little bit, their weather is not as good. They were brought into the conference to increase the television football ratings and to some extent basketball ratings in big cities like St. Louis and Kansas City. And the other thing, and if you look at, say, let's just say, talk about Billy Beane and the Oakland A's and the way he built that team and the Oakland A's dynasties, or not quite a dynasty, but the Moneyball era. He did it almost entirely by recruiting or signing and drafting college players, because he likes the college player for a number of reasons. One, as I mentioned, they're more fundamentally skilled because they've been better coached between what they've received from a 7-coach coaching staff at the college level, and then what they've received also. They're getting very good coaching in the fall, and they're getting very good coaching playing in the Cape Cod League in the summer. Some of the best coaches in America are in the Cape Cod League. So these guys are coming out ready to go. And you go to LSU or Florida or Alabama, and you do well, you're going to be drafted very high and be a millionaire as you enter into professional baseball. So the only high school players who are really signing are the ones who are so good that they are top 10 draft picks, and they really foresee these guys as being in the big leagues in a couple of years. Somebody like an Alex Rodriguez, who had a full ride scholarship to the University of Miami, but turned it down to sign with Seattle back in the day. Somebody like that. But more and more, you're looking at the draft, and they're college players. They are now, the junior colleges they're going to take a bit of a hit, because as I understand it, the NCAA has or is going to increase the limit of scholarships in baseball to 40. I think it's 40. Maybe I don't have it in front of me, but I think I read that. It's definitely an increase, and a lot has changed. The major leagues have revamped their minor league system to the point where instead of 7 minor league teams, you only have 4. There's fewer leagues. The junior colleges are going to lose a lot of players because there's more scholarships at Division I. So that means more guys are going to get scholarships to go to a Division I school, not play in junior college. That hurts the JCs, which saddens me, because junior college baseball has always been close to my heart, and they've produced a lot of great players. Whether that's going to continue to happen, I don't know. But a lot of really good players who get overlooked get an opportunity to thrive at the JC level. But college baseball, these are powerhouses. And, the rules are different. You still have to play 3 years. It's not like the one and done that you see in basketball or football. I guess you still have to go. And I think there's still a transfer portal. Paul Scanes started off at Air Force and then transferred to LSU, but I don't think it's as prevalent as it is in college football for various reasons. Although what you do see, I've seen this in football as well, is you'll see a guy who's a good high school athlete, and he goes to the Ivy League, and he plays there a year, and as often happens, you develop physically, and next thing you know, you're really better than an Ivy League player, and you transfer to one of these big schools.
Sure.
The other thing you also see in the transfer portal, this is not necessarily talking about college baseball, is you'll see a 5th-year player who's got a year of eligibility transferring to get his MBA at Yale or Harvard or someplace like that. Right. So that's an opportunity to really increase your academic credentials. But yeah, it's it's between the stadiums and the publicity that you're getting and the production value of the television and radio productions and the excitement of the games. I mean, a friend of mine, his son was at Mississippi State, and he came back and he was just raving. He said there were 14,000 people, and it was just a madhouse. Even a bigger deal than a major league game. I mean, it's really like a college football or basketball game. You've got, the band will be out there. There'll be cheerleaders, and the fans are in giving it that whole college atmosphere that you see that you don't even see at the professional level.
Yeah, the excitement of going to a game. Again, the money that was put into the stadiums, the benefit that has trickled down to where everybody enjoys it. And the most important of all of those situations, you go, but do you go back? Do you go a second or a third time? Is it affordable? Is it fun? Is it something that I enjoy and want to be a part of, especially for an older generation that lives near the campus, that they can participate and do so in an environment where there's not much else to do? Love it. I'm going to ask you one quick question, though, Steven, and go back to the College World Series. In my opinion, it's got to be pitching over hitting, but what wins it for you? If you're a coach and you've got a team, you get through the Super Regional, and you're invited to be a part of the College World Series, you get there, what's it going to take to bring home a championship?
Well, you have to have depth. You have to have depth in your pitching staff because
how deep? 3, 4, how 5?
Yeah.
How many star pitchers do you need to have? Not stars. How many above average do you need to have?
Well, you're gonna need a bullpen because there's going to be bullpen games, or there's games where your starter gets knocked out, or you're still in the game. Pitching will always be the dominant thing. Any sport is defense. Whether this, Harper, football defense, basketball defense. Once you get in the playoffs, especially. Baseball, got to have pitching and defense. College baseball changed some years ago. USC won the national championship in 1998 using a really high-powered aluminum bat. And the scores were just ridiculous. The championship game was USC 21, Arizona State 14. And all those games were just offensive juggernaut games. SC did get some good pitching and some really good relief pitching. They had a guy named Seth Etherton, who was a closer, pitched in the major leagues a little bit. And he saved the day for the Trojans. But they changed the bats in college baseball. I don't know whether this went down to high school or not. But the bats after that were not as the ball was not flying off those bats quite as much. I think this was in response to so much offense throughout the 90s. And, there were, Oklahoma State with Robin Ventura, and they had another guy, Pete, played for. These teams were putting up, some of these guys were hitting 48 homers in a single high school college season. And some of the stadiums were bandboxes. Florida State had a notoriously small field that was very difficult for pitching. But that kind of changed after 98, and you started to see better pitching. Mark Pryor of USC, for instance, was 15-3 with about a 1.87 ERA, pitching in very strong competition for the 2001 USC team that went to the World Series, although they were beaten ultimately by the Miami Hurricanes. And that was kind of the end of the Trojans. Coach Mike Gillespie, left a few years later, and that really was kind of the end for USC baseball. John Savage should have been given the job because he was a coach under Gillespie. He built UCLA into a program. Oregon State was built into a program, but nobody's been able to keep up with the likes of Vanderbilt, which came on strong when Coach Corbin came there, and David Pryor came out of Vanderbilt. And it was interesting that Vanderbilt is not a strong athletic school. It's a very strong academic school. but they're not particularly good in basketball or football. They're not good in football. They're a doormat in the SEC. But this was something that Coach Corbin said, well, okay, we're going to really concentrate on baseball because this is something we can be good at. And that's exactly what happened. And they became known as the school that produced pitchers, because there was Pryor, then there was Sonny Gray, who came out, was still an outstanding major league pitcher, and a number of other really strong. Walker Buehler of the Dodgers came out of that program. Unfortunately, he's had a number of arm injuries. That being part of this weird story in baseball, which is why do these guys get injuries when they're not throwing as many pitches and they're being coddled more and they're supposedly getting the best training methods. I don't know what the answer to that is, but the point is, as I'd mentioned, Vanderbilt built their program on great pitching. South Carolina had a very good pitching coach, and they had some really good teams. You mentioned Coastal Carolina. I can remember I was an assistant coach at the University of California, Berkeley. And in 91, 92, we went to the NCAA playoffs and the College World Series. We had a really good team and a lot of offense. And I remember flying to Wichita, Kansas for the regionals. This was Wichita, too, by the way, a cold weather school that had won the first this is the first cold weather school to win a College World Series in 1989, which is only a couple years earlier. First cold weather school since Ohio State in 1966. But I remember we were on the plane, and the Coastal Carolina team was on the plane with us. And there was a sense of arrogance with the Cal players because we were Cal. And we were the West Coast in the Pacific 10 Conference. And this was where the best college baseball and the best players were at that time. And it still was definitely on the West Coast. You had Stanford was very strong at that time, and Cal was very good. And these guys from Coastal Carolina, they were just happy to be there. You could just tell by talking to them. They had this attitude like, yeah, we're just happy to be on an airplane to play in the postseason. And then they won the College World Series some years ago. I don't know what year that was, 2019 or something like that.
16, Steve, 2016.
Yeah. And they're a far bigger program now than almost anybody in the Pac-12 conference. Of course, there is no Pac-12 conference. So if you want to call that the Big Ten Conference, I really don't know what we're going to see in the Big Ten. This is maybe an opportunity for USC and UCLA and also Oregon and Washington to upgrade themselves as a college baseball power because some of these teams in the Big Ten, even though they are mostly cold weather schools, Nebraska, for instance, draws very well. I'm not sure how well. I think Michigan draws well in terms of attendance. There's just a lot of enthusiasm for sports, not just football, in the Big Ten. Whether that carries over to some of these West Coast teams that have moved over to the Big Ten, we will see, because this is the first year. Oregon certainly had a very good season in football. They slumped at the very end, but they did have a good year. I didn't see much in basketball. We'll see what happens in baseball.
Yeah, the conferences and the realignment, I think it's going to happen again. There's going to come a time, in my opinion, in the near future where the athletic directors are going, we're making more money by moving, but it's costing us a heck of a lot more than we thought to send our women's swim team and tennis team across the country to go play against the team either
35-degree weather
out east or out west. Yeah, there's a difference with that. But what does a fan that might be interested in going and adding that to their bucket list things of must do before it's too late? What are some of the sites you need to see, or is there a specific restaurant that you would say, man, you just got to do it. Get a burger at such and such a place. Where do you go when you're in Omaha?
All you really need to do, I don't know the name of the place, but there's a restaurant which is literally across the street from Charles Schwab Field. And that's the one that has the really great photography of early Omaha and pictures of the building of Rosenblatt Stadium and some of the early political leaders who brought the College World Series to Omaha. And they're very much like the Chamber of Commerce in Pasadena, who insisted that the Rose Bowl stay in Pasadena because there was a time in which other cities attempted to wrest the Rose Bowl away from Pasadena, and there was certainly a period in the 1950s where other cities very well may have said, we'd like to have the College World Series, or maybe we should have a rotating College World Series like they do in the Final Four, because as you mentioned, it was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and then it was in Wichita. Wichita became home of the National Baseball Congress, which is it's the College World Series of summer baseball. It's a fabulous, I think it's a 64-team tournament that's played in August for all the champions of the Cape Cod League, the Alaska League, the Jayhawk League, the California Collegiate League, and other semi-pro leagues play. But getting back to your question, so anywhere you go in Omaha, I highly recommend. It's just fun. There's young people. You're just having a blast. It's a party. It really is. It's up there with any collegiate sporting event. It's just as great. You can't get any better. And it's in the summertime, so that's magnificent. Then beyond that, I would certainly say, and I've never been to it, but I would love to I'd love to see that tailgate at Ole Miss. The stadiums at Texas A&M and Texas are just beautiful. Wallace State, a junior college in Alabama, is really my friend, his son played there. That's a beautiful place. And a lot of these stadiums are just fantastic. The University of Miami, that was a place I went to when I was coaching. I don't know if it's still as exciting as it was. It was a big deal back in the day. They were one of the programs in the 80s that really developed college baseball because they were selling that place out, and they had national championship teams, and they had a great coach, and a lot of great players came out of that program. Today, the other Florida schools, most notably Florida, that's another exciting place to go to. You're going to certainly be in hot weather, no question about that. So be prepared to sweat and probably just pour water over yourself. Florida State is an interesting collegiate baseball anomaly. They've never won the College World Series. They had a coach named Mike Martin who was there for years and years and years. They always hit, but they never won. They went many, many times, but they never won. Why? I can't say. But there is a lot of backstory to a lot of these college baseball programs. Stanford is a team that was really strong under Coach Mike Marcus in the 80s, and then they were strong in the 90s, and they've been to the World Series many, many times. And they produced a pitcher named Peterson, who is a mainstay of the ESPN announcing crew. But they have not won a World Series since 1988, when they had Mike Messina and Jack. He was the 1993 Cy Young Award winner.
McDowell?
Jack McDowell. Jack McDowell, I believe he played at Notre Dame High School, if I'm not.
He sure did. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
I should have done that earlier.
Exactly. And he was the Cy Young winner for the White Sox.
Yep.
And he pitched what I consider the best college game I've ever seen, which was a 2-hit shutout over USC, an SC team that was 17-0 when the game started at a sold-out Dado Field. This is like 1987. I was only a couple of years out of school. great game. I know Jack McDowell. He had a brother who was at SC when I was there. I think he was an infielder for Rod Dado's team. So I kind of knew him a little bit. Great pitcher.
Yeah, we should get him on the show. All right, let's look at the last
Yeah.
10 years or so. Tennessee wins it last year. LSU wins their 7th in 2023. So congratulations to the Tigers. Ole Miss in 2022. Mississippi State in 21. Now, in 2020, they didn't have one. That was your COVID cancellation year. Vanderbilt wins their 2nd in 2019. Oregon State is the only team from the West Coast that's won it in the past 10 years. That was 2018. Florida in 17. We mentioned Coastal Carolina in 16. Virginia wins it in 2015. That's their first. Vanderbilt wins their first in 14. UCLA, I know, we'll give Bruins credit. John Savage wins it. They beat Mississippi State in 2013. Arizona in 2012. South Carolina wins it back-to-back in 2010 and 2011. But mostly dominated. You mentioned the SEC schools, and mostly Eastern schools. There's a couple of West Coast. Midwest, not going to happen, right? It's just that they don't have what it takes right now, at least in this particular era of time. It seems the best high school, college assembly of talent stays in the South, and they produced the most victories here in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, you mentioned Mississippi State. They did a really good SEC story. That's another reason the SEC is so much better. Just to throw in an aside, one of my best friends, Terry Marks, was up to be commissioner of the Pacific 12 conference. I think it was still the Pacific 10. This was around 2011, 2012. And he didn't get it. They gave it to this guy, Scott, whose background was tennis. Terry had played baseball for Rod Dado, and he had his background as president of Coca-Cola. And the first thing Terry was going to do is he was going to create a partnership with ESPN, and he was going to put me in charge of creating documentaries for the Pac-10 and the Pac-12, histories of the Pac-10, very much like what you see at SEC Storied. Well, Scott took over. You don't see any documentaries on the Pac-12. There's no excitement in that network at all. Of course, again, it doesn't exist anymore. That conference would still exist if Terry had been named commissioner. But SEC Storied has some of the best documentaries on college sports you've ever going to see. They're just fantastic. Shaq O'Neal, Thunder and Lightning with Palmero and Will Clark, and a great one a couple of years ago about, I believe you said 2021 Mississippi State. This was a team that was struggling, and they were playing 500 ball at midseason, and they were out of it. They were in this great conference with all these magnificent teams that were better than them. And they just said to themselves, nope, we are going to retool this program. We are going to work harder than ever. We are not going to give up. We are going to, what any good coach does, any good coach always has his team at playing their best at the second half of the season, going into the playoffs. That's what they did. They had to win key games down the stretch. They had to win key games in the tournament and going on the road in the regional playoffs, and they were able to win, and they pulled out a College World Series title. That was an underdog story. Another great underdog story is the 2008 Fresno State Bulldogs. Now, this was a team, they were always good. They were always a powerhouse team. They had gone to the World Series in 1959. They had been to the NCAA playoffs many times and hosted many. They were a staple of hosting Western regionals back when I was playing and throughout the 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s. But they hadn't won. And they were a school that you looked at and said, well, they really should win. And they finally did win in 2008. They beat Georgia, an SEC team, in the championship game. in 2008, I believe 6-0. That was a real big story. There was a book written about them, and that was a really nice story. If you look at Central California is not like coastal California. It's very much, it's like the Midwest or the South. The fan base is very enthusiastic. They don't have a big league team. And so you have a school like Fresno State that's sometimes really good in football and usually really good in baseball. And that was the culmination of their baseball program winning the College World Series in 2008.
Yep, some great teams that we've had a chance to talk about today. Steven, you've got a chance to go. You've been to Omaha. You've got to interview people. You've done it professionally. You've done it as a fan as well. Just before we go, just give the overall experience to someone who's never been before. We mentioned a couple of the restaurants, but what in particular have we missed? Or you got to do this when you do that. You have to have a Dodger dog when you go to Chavez Ravine. What are some of the things that you would want to make sure that you get accomplished while you're in Omaha?
Talk to people. Go there with acquire some knowledge. Watch this show. Read up and know a little bit about what you're talking about so that you can have conversations with people from LSU, Mississippi, Oxford, Mississippi, Tuscaloosa, Gainesville, Austin, Texas. You're having an opportunity to talk to America when you go there, more so than probably any other sporting event. I mean, the Final Four is 4 teams. These are 8 teams, especially if you get there early. You're talking to people. People come from all over, even if their school isn't in it. And so you're having these wonderful conversations as a baseball fan and just as an American. And then you mentioned earlier bringing on board Jack McDowell. I have a friend, Bill Bordley, who won the national championship game in '78. We're going to have him on at some point this summer, I think after June. Bill is avoidable. He can get Jack McDowell, and maybe you can also, since you have the high school connection. Love to have him on, and a few other people that I'd like to have on who have college baseball and College World Series connections. A friend of mine named Chuck Fick, who played in the '79 series for Pepperdine. A friend of mine named Brad Cole. Brad is an interesting character we're going to have on because he brings on the walk-on perspective. And that's, anybody who's seen Rudy knows that walk-ons sometimes can be important players on college sports teams. Sometimes they come on like gangbusters as late bloomers. But getting back to what you said, the whole experience is talk to people and just be a part of it. Immerse yourself in the whole scene because, man, it's as good as it gets.
Yeah, I would imagine keep your ears open. In other words, listen to other conversations, and you may not want to butt into them, but value the historical references and the amount that people know, the amount that some people don't know, and bring it all together and have the best possible experience you can.
Bring your kids. There's lots of little kids.
Yeah.
It's affordable enough. College baseball is the last affordable thing you can bring. Most college baseball stadiums have grassy knoll areas where it's safe to let your kid you're kind of enclosed. Your kid isn't going to get lost or picked up. And most places have an area like that where you can bring your children. You can bring your children to the College World Series and they will truly love it.
You can still watch the game. The kids are just a few feet away and they're playing. They don't care about the game. You know that, especially the little ones. But the value of smelling the grass and seeing the field for the first time when you're coming in from a parking lot, that is a childhood experience that everybody relishes and talks about for years and years once they become adults and how it affected their focus and their love for the game. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. And Steven, final thoughts before we go today.
Yeah, I might add that the staff at Charles Schwab Field is very helpful. I had an issue with my tickets on my phone, and I was like, oh man, now what? and they handled it. They had my name. They oh yeah, you need to talk to this lady. Sent me right over. She was able to look me up, get me in. I had no issues. The ushers, the people who work in the concessions, everybody there is Midwestern friendly. It's I cannot recommend it enough, Harper. I'd love to go there with you one of these days. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I haven't been, but the tournament started in 1947. It's still going strong, and again, because of the television connections and the network significance, there's more eyes than have been on it at any point in time. They've wanted it to grow. It has certainly done that, and it is the College World Series. Steven, before we go, is there anything else that we need to know before we head out for this week?
No, I just wanted to thank you for giving me an opportunity. Most of these shows that we're doing, and I want to thank Vincent and Logan and you. I mean, this is just so much fun. This is a labor of love for me. This really, to talk about these things that I love so much and are such a part of my life. And I know you enjoy it too, because it's a part of your life. We're athletes and we're in the media now, and sports is just such a integral aspect of our lives. And I love all sports, but baseball, I love football. I love the Trojans, but man, you get me talking about baseball. We're going to do at some point in the future, we're going to get into a book I read called The Glory of Their Times. And I'm going to get into old time baseball. Some things that nobody knows except me. But thank you for this opportunity. And thanks.
You're very welcome.
And Dave Weatherman and Frank Ferroni on there as well.
No kidding. Dave and Frank did a great job of just talking about very briefly, that experience. You got 20 total minutes, but getting to relive and rehash some fantastic memories. Yesterday we had Dave Hoffman, who was a linebacker in the 1991 NCAA champion Washington Huskies football team. And he said back in '89, he was a freshman there. He and Steve Entman had tickets to go watch the Seahawks play the Raiders. And he had heard of him before, but he'd never seen him play. And Dave was saying that I got to watch former Ricky Ellison play linebacker. Yeah. And he said it was an epiphany for him, is that he just watched his feet. He watched how he moved. He watched his coverage, how he conducted the huddle, everything that he did as a captain on the defense. Dave learned enough about that to go, I want to be more like him. And baseball allows you that same experience for a little kid or even a big one, to go and watch somebody kick the dirt off their cleats right before they step into the box. There's something magical about the way that they tap their bat on the plate, the way they have their hands while they're waiting for the pitcher to set. All these different things that you learn from, and you got to enjoy that experience on more than one occasion. But thank you for that as well. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody. We appreciate, again, Logan Landers, Vincent Turner, our co-host and founder, who helps us put a show together for you folks. We appreciate it. So for everyone at 100 Yards of Football, we want to say thank you for tuning in to Take 5 with Steven Travers. I'm Harper LeBel, hoping you have a fantastic rest of your day.